Robert, it is great to see you, and I so appreciate you coming to us live from beautiful Albuquerque, New Mexico, to talk about DC Central Kitchen as we mark our 37th anniversary. And those of us who know and love DC Central Kitchen know a little bit of the story about the young renegade nightclub manager who drove around the streets of Washington, D.C., recovering leftovers and proving that you could use leftover food and assets and resources in our community in a different way to fight hunger on a deeper level. But looking back on January 20th, 1989, what was it that compelled you to make DC Central Kitchen a thing, to say that I have to bring this into the world? And how relevant are those concerns today?
Well, hey, Alex, man, it's great to see you, and it's an honor to be in front of all my friends at DC Central Kitchen. What an incredible journey we've all shared. It's funny. I can go back there, like so many things in life. I can be there right now, but it was a sense of frustration. I had volunteered, like so many people who come in every single day to DC Central Kitchen. Yet the experience I had felt so one-dimensional. You all have heard me say it so many times. That first experience for me felt more like it was about the redemption of the giver and not the liberation of the receiver. And I was just raised in a different culture than that one-dimensional thing. There had to be a liberation component. Now, many of you will know I tried to give this idea away. I went to so many of the different charities in town saying, you can feed more people better food, less waste. You can shorten the line by the way you serve it. You can offer the restaurants and hotels and caterers and farmers that gave food a chance to employ men and women who were trained and ready to rock. But I was rebuffed everywhere I turned. So the DC Kitchen was born out of wild optimism, a belief in the audacious use of existing resources, and quite frankly, a commitment to kind of sticking it to the system as it existed, and saying, no, I'm not going to submit to the tyranny of charity. The DC Central Kitchen is birthed and baptized in liberation.
Well, and I want to touch on that sort of like 24-hour round-the-clock commitment, because I think there's often a temptation in nonprofits to stake a claim. We came up with this idea. We own this mission space. We own this funding stream, and now it's ours. But you made a choice with the early concept of your team as it grew to 1 and 2 and a few other early co-conspirators to be open every single day. Why?
Well, a lot of it was the food was available every single day, and I was really into this idea of radical no waste, that I was going to be, a living, breathing kind of commitment to that idea of no, this town's too cool. DC is too fine a city to let food be thrown away. So that really kind of led to that idea of we're not ever going to close. We're never going to say no. And we're always going to share everything we have with whoever comes calling.
Well, and that shows, I think, a level of ownership and commitment to mission. But you've also always said that a huge part of leadership is letting go. And throughout your tenure with the kitchen, whether it was stepping in to help right the ship of the United Way, bringing on Mike Curtin as Chief Operating Officer and later CEO, being willing to start national ventures and being very open as a leader in open source knowledge sharing across the sector, what gave you the confidence in those moments to say, I can let go, I should let go, and other folks are ready to take that step?
Tragic examples, brother. I watched people who I admired hold on too long or just clutch and control. And it was sad to me. I watched people, I've said this so many times, but nobody wakes up when they're 20 and looks in the mirror and says, when I grow up, I'm going to be a boring bureaucrat that stifles innovation. Yet, so many places I went, I watched people kind of become that. And I was just bound and determined that I was not going to grow up to be that I wanted to be a righteous leader who listened, who was willing to change his opinion when confronted with a better idea, who would, again, really open up the floor, whether it was to men and women on the team with the Volunteer Bill of Rights, giving volunteers a real say, pledging that I would never treat a volunteer the way I was treated, who was rebuffed when I proposed a better idea. The idea was constantly, there must be more than one person leading this ship. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy at times. I mean, their ego always gets in the way. But again, what was exciting was watching how many people in the organization, and I'll use our good friend John Fenner as a great example, man. John Fenner, one of the few people, I think he's in the 24 club now. He's been there 24 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Going strong.
But John's a classic example. I mean, John deserves every say in what goes on because he committed himself. And there were hundreds of people like that who came on board and demonstrated through commitment and action and determination that they were just as essential, just as important, and had just as good ideas as I did. So I just want to really pursue that, in a big purposeful way. And that includes my life now, where, I'm kind of an elder ally who says I drank deep from the well. It's another person's time, and I am a servant to a new generation.
Well, I'll never forget, I wrote to you out of the blue 20 years ago this week, when I started my time at DC Central Kitchen as an undergraduate college intern. And I'd written you out of the blue after reading your book in college in upstate New York and said, "Hey, man, I loved your book. I so admire what you're doing. Can I come and help?" And the fact that you responded personally to me at a time, inboxes were different back then, but everybody still had plenty of email to sort through back in 2005, 2006. And you gave me a chance. And so I've been able to spend the last 20 years doing purposeful work because you were willing to bring in a young person and create a space for them to contribute. And so as we're chatting now, I'm talking to you here on the second floor of a 35,000 square foot DC Central Kitchen, having a hot coffee from DC Central Kitchen Cafe, one of 3 locations citywide. And we are doing so many things, 17,000 meals, training almost 180 people annually. Looking at this 2026 version of this engine that you designed and released into the world, what parts of the modern version of DC Central Kitchen are you most inspired by?
Well, again, man, I love that we're still open. And not open in the literal sense, but open every day. That idea of the DC Kitchen hasn't closed in like 14,000 days or some incredible number like that. That means a lot to me. Because another generation might come along and say, "Look, man, I get it, but we can't afford it," or, the utilities are too high, or we're not getting the food we used to on the weekends. There's a million reasons to reel it back in. But I am just so inspired that the organization has remained committed to that idea of no, we're going to keep moving forward. Audacious use of existing resources, relentless incrementalism, that really inspires me. I love that so many people, yourself at the top of the list, have really found, a career, a home, a place where you can really, you can be that adult you dreamed you'd be when you were young, and the world was way ahead of you. And you're like, this is the kind of person I want to be. I love that the kitchen opens its doors to so many people like that.
Any final thoughts for that incredibly diverse community of people who make our work possible?
Yeah, man, what really set DC Central Kitchen apart? I mean, yeah, we were the first job training program for, I hate the word homeless, but I'll use it for today's purposes. But we were the very first. And that idea of it's one thing to just pick up food and drop it off somewhere. No, let's bring it back and again squeeze every ounce of opportunity out of every pound we get. But I think what's lost sometimes is we really embraced a side by side model. We kind of toss out that buffer of in my situation, it was the kind of folding table that delineated me, the volunteer, from the men and women who were standing out in the rain to get food that first night I went out. But that idea of everybody, whether it's the president of the United States, an older person who wants to stay active in their older years, a young person who needs service, a corporate team who wants to come in and build their kind of team, but at the same time doing something for the community. And most importantly, men and women in the job training program who might still sometimes be questioning the validity of what they're attempting to do over a 12-week period at DC Central Kitchen. It was the idea of Washingtonians working side by side that I think really differentiated our model, and still does. That everybody has a role, everybody has something to offer, everybody has a gift, everybody has something to contribute. A great nonprofit does not try and fix the problem. It reveals the power of community to fix the problem when we work side by side. And that's the power of the DC Central Kitchen.
Robert, thank you for everything you've done to reveal what is truly great about the Washington, D.C. community, to bring people together and help us rip out hunger by its roots. Happy anniversary,
right on, my brother. And keep it badass over there, man.